It's there's this really funny paradox when it comes to
Oh,
rebellion.
yeah, totally.
Like when you picture a countercultural movement, especially one that's built around, aggressive, loud music,
Right.
you naturally expect this atmosphere of total unbridled freedom. Like you picture a bunch of teenagers in a garage completely throwing out the mainstream rule book and just deciding they're going to play whatever they want, however they want.
Yeah, it's that romanticized idea of pure sonic anarchy.
Yeah.
Just the absolute rejection of whatever is playing on, like, the top 40 radio station.
Exactly. But then you actually look a little closer at heavy metal, a genre that's famously built on that exact premise, right?
Right.
And suddenly you realize, well, they didn't throw out the rule book at all. They just, they wrote a massive, highly specific and incredibly rigid new one.
Oh, and they enforce it with an iron fist.
Yeah.
It really is the ultimate example of a codified subculture.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fascinating how quickly musical rebellion turns into a strict uniform.
Yep.
Both in, how you sound and how you look.
So true. Well, welcome to the Deep Dive for Saturday, June 6, 2026. We are so glad you're here with us today. Because today we are unpacking this exact paradox.
We really are, and we've got a brilliant stack of sources for this one.
Yeah, we have this massive, highly opinionated discussion thread from the Reddit community, Are Metal for the Masses? And the title of the thread asks a really simple question. It just says, most overused metal tropes.
And man, the responses are an absolute goldmine. You have thousands of these die-hard fans just ruthlessly picking apart the exact musical, visual, and lyrical crutches that their absolute favorite bands lean on day in and day out.
It's so good. So our mission today is to decode these recurring patterns, and we're going to look at the entire map of heavy music.
Right, because I feel like sometimes in these discussions, the extreme stuff gets all the focus.
Like death metal.
Exactly. Death metal gets all the oxygen because the tropes there are just so loud and shocking.
Yeah.
But we really want to look at the whole ecosystem today.
Yeah, from the soaring dragons of power metal to the dusty tape decks of black metal, right down to the earth-shattering breakdowns of modern metalcore, we want to balance it out.
Which is crucial. Because you really can't understand one subgenre's rules without seeing what they're, reacting against in another.
Okay, let's unpack this. I want to start before a single note is even played. Because before a band hits the stage, they have to decide what world they exist in, right?
The aesthetics.
Right. The words they sing, the themes they adopt. And it turns out those thematic corners are shockingly rigid.
Oh, very rigid.
Yeah.
Like if you're a metal musician, you don't get a lot of thematic crossover. You really have to pick your lane.
Take power metal, for example. The community in this thread had an absolute field day with power metal lyrics.
They did.
There was a user named MetalPlayer666 who pointed out that every single power metal band seems to share the exact same rhyming dictionary.
It's so true.
Like, you are essentially guaranteed to hear the word fly rhymed with high and sky.
Every single time. Or, fire rhymed with higher and desire. It's practically mathematical at this point.
Or fight and might.
Yes. If you write a power metal chorus, the probability of those specific vowel sounds appearing approaches, like 100%.
No.
And actually, there's a structural reason for that.
Wait, really? A structural reason?
Yeah, think about how that music sounds. It's fast, it's triumphant, and it relies on these massive, galloping, double-kick drum patterns.
Right.
So if a singer has to project a soaring anthemic melody over all that noise, they need open vowel sounds, like the I sound in fire or sky.
Oh, so they can physically hold the note out?
Precisely. It's a mechanical necessity that just became a lyrical cliché over time. Another user even pointed out the sheer overuse of the phrase, so far away. They were practically coughing the name of the band Dragon Force as they typed it.
That makes total sense. They aren't just rhyming those words because they love dragons. They're rhyming them because the human vocal cords literally need that shape to cut through the mix. Well, if you move across the metal map over to, say, stoner and doom metal, you find a completely different but equally rigid obsession. The thread highlights that these bands simply cannot stop naming themselves after wizards or witches.
Oh, it's nonstop.
Right. Electric Wizard, Dope Throne, you name it. It's like an entire subculture obsessed with finding a new font to write the word wizard in.
which, again, perfectly matches the heavy, slow, plodding nature of doom metal riffs.
Yeah.
You want something that sounds ancient and mystical because the guitars sound like they're literally moving through molasses.
Yeah, it fits the vibe. But the thread doesn't just stick to dragons and wizards. The fans also dive deep into the darker side of the genre's history, looking at things that used to be incredibly controversial but now just feel like, well, tired tropes.
Right.
And looking purely at the history of the genre through the fans' eyes, you see this massive shift in how shock value is handled.
And death metal's the perfect example of this.
Mm.
Early on, the intensely graphic, gore-obsessed lyrics were the entire point. It was meant to horrify the mainstream.
Yeah.
But users like Untold Cheese 34 and Ombertron pointed out that decades later, the gore has actually become remarkably boring.
Boring.
Yeah, one user joked that they would rather hear a song about a campfire than listen to another hyper-detailed description of peeling a child like a banana and extracting its brain.
Wow, which is such a vivid image, but I completely get where they're coming from. When early bands like Carcass were doing it in the late 80s and 90s, they used this incredibly verbose, almost clinical medical terminology. It was deeply unsettling.
That is fresh, yeah.
Now it's just cheap slasher movie dialogue. The fans in the thread are essentially saying, we've seen this movie 100 times. It doesn't scare us anymore.
And that fatigue extends right into black metal, too.
Oh, for sure.
Think about the classic trope of overt Satanism and blatant anti-Christian blasphemy. In the 90s, that was genuinely dangerous, especially with the church burnings in Norway.
Right, it was national news.
But today, users who actually study occultism noted that the constant generic blasphemy just feels like a cheesy shtick. They pointed out that unless a band tackles those themes with genuine creativity and seriousness, like the bands Watain or Archcoat, it just feels like a Halloween costume.
It's just lazy. And that laziness was called out in the early 2000s deathcore scene, too. A user named Alchemist highlighted how pervasive the trope of overt misogyny was in that specific era. And just impartially reporting what the thread said here, they noted that simply screaming offensive terms at women wasn't actually heavy. It was just boring, whiny angst. They joked that if they had a nickel for every time a vocalist yelled a specific expletive on a breakdown in 2007, they'd be rich.
What's fascinating here is how all of this, whether it's the power metal rhyming dictionary, the doom metal wizards, or the faded shock value of gore and Satanism, what's fascinating is how these boundaries function psychologically for the listener today.
It actually reminds me of how mainstream superhero movies almost always end with a giant glowing blue laser beam shooting up into the sky.
Oh, the sky beam. Yes.
Right. The very first time you saw it, maybe in the Avengers, it felt apocalyptic. The stakes felt real. But by the 15th movie, that does it.
It's nothing.
It's not thrilling anymore. It's just the expected wallpaper of the third act. You're just waiting for the sky beam.
That is exactly the mechanism at play. These extreme thematic boundaries in metal were originally designed to alienate mainstream listeners.
Yeah.
But over time, they stop being dangerous. They become comfortable.
Comfortable.
Yeah, you put on a death metal record, you actively expect the lyrical equivalent of a horror movie. If they started singing about politics or heartbreak, you'd be jarringly pulled out of the experience. The trope becomes comforting rather than confronting.
Oh, that makes so much sense. But that need for a safe, predictable boundary doesn't just stop at the lyrics, does it?
Not at all.
Because if you're singing about a rigid, predictable world, the actual architecture of the music has to match that predictability.
Which brings us to the actual sonic blueprints.
The physical structural DNA of the riffs. Yes. And the Reddit thread gets incredibly technical here, which I absolutely love. Let's look at the specific musical crutches fans are calling out. In the slam and beatdown hardcore scenes, everybody talks about the 3-2-1 progression.
Ah, yes, the 3-2-1. For anyone who doesn't play guitar, this isn't just a random set of numbers. It's a highly specific, syncopated rhythm played on the lowest strings.
Right.
It creates this very bouncy, almost primal groove. It is literally designed, on a biomechanical level, to force a crowd to start nodding their heads and eventually moshing.
It is a rhythm weapon. And then over in black metal, multiple users brought up what they called the Jesus Todd riff, named after a famous track from that controversial 90s scene.
This is essentially the skeleton key to the entire subgenre.
Right. The running joke in the thread is that if you learn this one specific technique, tremolo, picking on the 7th and 9th frets, you can instantly start a black metal band.
Which is hilarious.
And for those listening, tremolo picking is when a guitarist picks a single string up and down as fast as humanly possible.
Yeah, it creates a continuous buzzing wall of sound. And when you isolate that technique on the 7th and 9th frets, the relationship between those two notes naturally creates a very dissonant, anxious, frosty tone.
The frosty tone.
That is the exact sonic frequency of black metal.
I love that. Then you have the broader, more universal metal trope that a deleted user perfectly captured. It's the classic song structure where a band chugs the exact same open low note for way too long, suddenly throws in one chaotic, discordant riff to wake you up, and then immediately goes right back to chugging the open note. Or, as my absolute favorite comment in the entire thread put it, from a user named Quack Candle, the same riff, but slower.
Oh, that is too accurate, which transitions us beautifully to User Nothing in My Mind. They essentially provided a hilarious step-by-step toolkit for how to build a modern metalcore song.
Oh, if you've ever listened to a metalcore playlist, this list will make you laugh out loud.
It's so spot on.
First, right before the music drops into the heaviest part of the song, the vocalist absolutely must scream the word blip.
Lay. It is an industry standard. It is the Wilhelm scream of heavy metal.
It really is.
Second, when you hit that breakdown, you play it incredibly slowly, operating under the illusion that a slower tempo automatically equals a heavier sound.
Which is such a trap. Playing slow without an underlying groove doesn't sound heavy, it just sounds like the drummer is falling asleep.
Completely.
And the third tool in the kit, to break up all that slow, low-end noise, you have to throw in random harmonic squeals on the guitar.
Right, and a harmonic squeal is when you catch the guitar string with your thumb right after picking it, which creates this high-pitched shrieking sound.
Yeah.
It's meant to contrast the low tuning, but it has become a massive crutch.
And don't forget the obligatory edgy movie quote.
Oh, of course.
You slap a piece of dialogue from an obscure thriller at the very beginning of the track. The user astutely pointed out that it might sound incredibly badass to the band sitting in the studio, but as a listener in your car, you're just sitting there waiting for the dialogue to end thinking, dude, I just want to hear the song.
Right. Combine all of that with the classic screaming verse, singing chorus formula, and you have the defining architecture of modern metalcore. The fans in the thread are practically begging for a little variety in how these songs are structured.
Okay, but I have to push back on the fans here.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because I'm reading all these complaints, but isn't this repetition exactly what makes a genre what it is?
How do you?
Think about it. If you throw on a classic country record, you expect a certain pedal steel twang and a certain acoustic strum pattern. If you remove the tremolo picking from black metal, or if you completely ban the slow breakdown from metalcore, are they even playing metal anymore?
That is the eternal tension of any genre music. Where is the line between a necessary ingredient and a tired cliché?
Even the original poster of the thread wrestled with this. They started the conversation by saying that music snobs always complain about Iron Maiden using the exact same E minor, C, D, E minor chord progression over and over again.
Right.
But then the original poster admitted, personally, I love all those songs. If the blueprint works and the song makes you feel good, why do we care if it's troopy?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, a trope is really only perceived as a bad thing when the band lacks the underlying songwriting talent to make the formula feel alive.
Tell me more about that.
Think about a jump scare in a horror movie. A cheap, poorly directed jump scare is just a loud noise that startles you. It's annoying.
Very annoying.
But a brilliantly directed jump scare, where the tension is earned, the pacing is perfect, and the payoff makes sense. That's exhilarating. It's the same mechanic, but the execution is completely different.
Yeah, that makes sense.
When Iron Maiden uses that standard chord progression, they're layering it with dynamic drumming, brilliant twin guitar harmonies, and a world-class vocal performance. They are elevating the trope.
But when a local, inexperienced band yells blah and plays a slow breakdown, it feels hollow because there's no actual tension built into the song to justify the release.
Exactly.
The trope is doing all the heavy lifting. It's just a crutch.
Exactly. And the fascinating thing about this reliance on formulas is that it doesn't stop when the band leaves the recording studio. The repetition bleeds out into the visual packaging, the marketing, and even the live performances.
Because metal is a fiercely visual medium. You can't just sound the part, you have to look the part. And user Gore Historian 69 provided a flawless breakdown of the unwritten rules for album covers.
Oh, this might be the most rigid area of the entire subculture.
Without a doubt. If you are a black metal band, your album cover must be a grainy, high-contrast black and white photograph. It's either a dark, blurry forest or a person wearing corpse paint standing in the snow.
There's no alternative.
If you play power metal, the cover has to be hyper-colorful fantasy art. Dragons, swords, glowing amulets.
Yep.
If it's grindcore, it needs to be a chaotic, political, cut-and-paste collage, borrowing heavily from the 80s punk rock aesthetic, and war metal. It's just a stark, black-and-white drawing of a demonic goat or Satan.
What is truly revealing here isn't just that bands use these visual tropes, but how the audience actively enforces them.
Right. The user points out that fans will sit around on Reddit and complain that album covers are too predictable. But the second a band actually tries something outside the box, like a brutal death metal band utilizing a frosty black metal aesthetic, or an album that just has a plain, colorful, geometric shape on the cover,
The audience revolts.
they refuse to listen to it. They actively punish the band for stepping outside the visual box.
Because deep down, the audience wants the packaging to explicitly tell them what product they are about to consume before they hit play.
So true.
But the visual aesthetic goes way beyond just the album artwork today. It extends to how the band members present themselves to the world, which brings us to a fascinating observation about the current state of the scene.
Here's where it gets really interesting. A user named Affectionate Mixed 1236 brought up what they call the modern clout era of metal. And they define this by pointing to a very specific new archetype, the main character vocalist.
This is such a sharp analysis of what happens when extreme music collides with the algorithm.
And they describe this new breed of vocalist as someone who has undeniable talent. Like, they can do the sickest, most technically proficient guttural vocals imaginable.
Right.
But they usually front a deathcore band that sounds heavily sanitized and overproduced. And the kicker is, the vocalist has a wacky, highly curated, TikTok-friendly social media presence.
We talked earlier about how the shock value of gore and Satanism has faded, right?
Yeah.
Extreme music used to be enough to shock people. But now that extreme music is completely normalized, how does a band cut through the noise and get attention?
They have to hack the algorithm.
Exactly. You have a genre that historically prided itself on being shadowy, mysterious, and dangerous, now being fronted by vocalists who are essentially playing the role of social media influencers.
The extreme vocals are just the soundtrack to a viral video. The user even lamented that the current big four contenders of this modern deathcore era put them to sleep because the entire package feels so manufactured. The music is an afterthought to the marketing. And that disconnect between a band's authentic energy and their desire to just look cool is heavily felt in the live show environment too.
The live show is sacred territory in metal. If you disrupt the energy of the room, the crowd will turn on you instantly.
And the thread is full of incredibly specific pet peeves about going to see these bands live. A user named Viridius RDM brought up a scenario that I think anyone who has ever been to a local gig will recognize.
Oh, absolutely.
You're at a tiny club, the local band is actually playing well, the momentum is building, the crowd is starting to nod along, and then
Here it comes.
the vocalist brings the entire show to a screeching halt to spend 3 minutes introducing every single band member by name, pointing to the bassist, pointing to the drummer.
To an audience that, frankly, doesn't know who any of them are.
Yes, it completely deflates the room. As the user noted, 90% of the audience in that setting just doesn't care. It is genuinely better for the band to just keep the momentum up and play the next song. Don't stop the train, just be polite.
And the original poster of the thread chimed in with perhaps the most universal live gripe of all. Bands standing on stage and commanding a completely dead audience to move more or open up this pit.
Which is almost always a massive red flag. If you have to ask people to move, you've already lost them.
Right.
The original poster had the perfect reply to this. They wrote, "If a band wants me to move, they better rate some better riffs."
You cannot demand the energy. The music has to physically command it.
Exactly. If you play the 3-2-1 slam groove correctly, you don't have to tell anyone to move. Their bodies will do it automatically.
This raises an important question regarding authenticity. When you step back and look at everything we've unpacked today, the mathematical rhyming of power metal, the required tremolo picking of black metal, the standardized metalcore breakdowns, the rigid album covers, and now these sanitized clout era social media behaviors.
Yeah.
It shows us something profound. Metal has developed its own highly effective, deeply structured marketing mechanics. In a genre that prides itself on being raw, countercultural, and fiercely anti-establishment, it actually relies on an incredibly rigid set of corporate-style branding rules to sell itself to its own audience.
It is a sprawling, wildly diverse ecosystem, but whether you are listening to power metal dragons flying high in the sky, black metal bands recording their blast beats on 1984 tape decks, or metalcore vocalists screaming blah right before dropping the tempo, The genre is entirely mapped out. The roads are paved.
And for you listening, understanding these tropes isn't about ruining the magic of the music. It's not about becoming a cynic. It actually acts as a decoder ring.
How so?
Well, think about next time you throw on a playlist or you go down to a local gig to support your scene. When you know these structural rules, it changes how you hear the music. It helps you distinguish between a band that is just lazily checking boxes because they want to fit in, and a band that is genuinely taking those established formulas, the breakdowns, the themes, the riffs, and elevating them into something spectacular. It helps you hear the difference between a cheap jump scare and a masterpiece.
So, what does this all mean? We started today by talking about the unwritten rulebook of rebellion, and it turns out that rulebook is incredibly thick, it is dog-eared, and it is fiercely guarded by the fans themselves. They want the rebellion, but they want it delivered exactly how they expect it.
Which leaves us with a final, lingering thought to ponder. We've seen how every single subgenre of heavy music today, from the lyrics to the riffs to the t-shirts, is fiercely protected by rules established decades ago.
Yeah.
So, what would a completely original, 100% trope-free subgenre of heavy music actually sound like if someone invented it tomorrow? What would it be?
That's a great question.
And perhaps more importantly, would the current metal community even accept it, or they just cross their arms, look at the stage, and call them posers?
I love that. We will leave you to chew on that one. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the meticulously structured chaos of heavy metal. We'll see you next time.